they were just wondering why Zip Whip's involved in ChiliPeppr. I tried to say it.
It's not.
Okay. So I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, awesome. Well, Bart, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about this. To Pumping Station 1. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Bart, you're kind of the reason I'm into CNC machining. So it's all your fault. I blame you. Just maybe to help me out here, is it just up on a big display or something? Everybody's sort of seeing my fat face in front of the crowd. Is that how it's set up?
Yeah, it's a very big display. It's a 8-foot screen.
Okay. All right. So if I pick my nose in front of everybody, it'll just be weird. Okay. So yeah. So I think Bart in particular. Oh yeah, there you go. Perfect. In particular, Bart had done the maker slide, and it was around that time I was trying to create this text-enabled espresso machine for ZipWhip, which is my company I run. I'm the CEO of ZipWhip. And so I started actually having to figure out how to do all the CNC type stuff, linear slides, and stepper controllers. I didn't know anything about it. And so the maker slide actually kind of came out after I had already bought some, like, you know, screw-driven machine or something. So either way, thank you.
I remember that. That was a little too early for me to get you anything.
Exactly, because you had only maybe invented the maker slide a couple months after that text-enabled espresso machine. But since somebody had asked that, ZipWhip is not involved in ChiliPeppr. ChiliPeppr is sort of my weekend hobby project. And ZipWhip's my day job. It consumes me completely. It's text messaging. It has nothing to do with CNC stuff, but I am super personally passionate about CNC. And ChiliPeppr is an open source project. It is not supposed to be commercial. It was never meant to be that. It's supposed to be a lot like the Linux operating system. In fact, that's kind of my goal, is to make it be the Linux of CNC with respect to Linux being open source. It's a baseline operating system. My goal is that ChiliPeppr becomes like a baseline for CNC control, and people add widgets and stuff on top of it to let you do fancier and fancier stuff. And I think we're already seeing a lot of that come to fruition today. And I'm going to show you guys some of that stuff that I think is pretty exciting, and some of the new stuff that I think we could do where we all benefit. So Bart, do you have like a Gerbil machine, you said, handy there?
A Gerbil machine hooked up. And I have a tiny G with one motor on it.
Nice. Okay. So should you share your screen instead of me, and we'll go through it that way, or do you want me to maybe share first and then maybe we'll swap back?
Why don't you start out first? If you can just simulate it, go through some of the features, and then that might be better.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
That sounds good. So, so here we are. I'm sharing my screen. Is that coming out okay?
Yeah, if you could go full screen on that, or maybe it is full screen.
It is full screen.
Okay, maybe, do I need to do something to make it bigger? I mean, it looks
cut off.
F11. F11.
Hit once.
There we go. Now it's looking better.
Okay. Good, because I'm on like a super high-res laptop screen here, so I don't know if that's coming out okay. Okay, so I guess I'm just curious for the folks there, maybe how many people actually have used ChiliPeppr? You know, is it nobody? Is it half the crowd? Is it everyone?
It's probably very few. So most of the stuff here is Gerbil and run on UGS.
Right.
And I myself, coming from Inventables, we're like almost exclusively Gerbil.
Yeah.
And a lot of our customers use UGS and then easel.
Yeah.
Is the big thing.
And of course, I started out using Gerbil and Universal G-Code Sender, and so I, was there, and I feel like as I've sort of progressed along, I feel like I kind of upgraded to Tiny G. Oh, I'm getting a lot of feedback now. And then, of course, using UGS, there were so many things I was craving beyond it. that was my motivation to do ChiliPeppr. So, you know, I hope people maybe start to see some of all of the amazing things that it does beyond some of the traditional software out there. So, you know, one of the first things that's really different, especially for those of you who use UGS, is that's Java based. And, you know, I think it's great. I think Winder's done a great job on it. I do think, though, that the browser is the future. The browser, if you even think about the amount of dollars spent on it, you know, Google alone has spent something like $8 billion developing Chrome and WebKit, and Apple's thrown money into WebKit. It has the most investment, which means it is the most advanced software humankind has access to. So that is why I'm using this as the platform. And I don't want to say that too lightly. It is an amazing platform for building user interfaces, and I just don't think anything comes close to it. And so, you know, if you think about this 3D viewer as the centerpiece, which was the goal, you really do want to visualize what it is that you're going to go mill out. And I think you need a really good visualizer, and things like WebGL made all of this doable. In a way, I still can't believe that the browser is this capable of sort of, you know, in fact, even right now, you guys can't see it, but I'm touching the screen and pinching and zooming to do all this. You know, it just features like that, I think, are pretty incredible. And that comes for free with the browser. So, you know, I have the default file loaded right now, which is just the ChiliPeppr logo. But, you know, if you want to load a different file, like your old circle, diamond, square calibration, you know, it's pretty much that easy. If you want to just drag it, the way to open your own G-code file, I've got some here, is you just drag it into the browser window. So pretty easy. I actually find that that is easier than having to hit File, Open, and navigate back. Let's see. I have a folder called Sample G-code. Let's see if we have anything interesting in here. The alien face is always fun. Super simple. So I'm just dragging right in. So of course that's how most of you are going to get started. You're going to do your CAM application, you know, things like CAM-BAM. A lot of people are using JScut these days. Let's see, gantry plates. A lot of people send me files. Oh, how big is that? It's 1.6 meg. Because I'm using the screen share right now, it's chewing through my CPU like mad. There we go. So things just open a little slow. In fact, I think these are gantry plates for the aux. Brandon Satterfield, I think, actually sent me this one just to debug. There's a lot of, this is milling aluminum, so he's got a lot of detail lines on this one. Anyway, that's, let me go back to the default file. So it is really that simple, but you've got, you know, maybe just to kind of navigate people around this, I think one of the first things you're going to want to do when you get in here is probably, you know, jog your machine around. And this is the area where we'll try to do it once I've got it maybe connected to the machine over there, so you guys can actually see it moving. But you can kind of see I'm going negative in the X direction, and I am connected to a tiny G right now. Granted, I'm at work, and I'm connected to the tiny G at my house. So all I did was connect to my home cable modem IP address from the office, and I'm seeing all of the devices off of my Raspberry Pi at my house. So I have 2 tiny G2s, I have 2 regular tiny Gs, and then this, I think I might, I don't know if I have a Gerbil device. This could technically be Gerbil. That's kind of amazing right there, is that I'm actually connected remote and controlling this from, you know, 10 miles away. But that's the whole serial port JSON server. Actually, that's probably what I should talk about right now, is to make this work out of the browser, you do have to download serial port JSON server. And so if you're on Windows or Mac or Linux or Raspberry Pi, which is actually my preferred platform to run serial port JSON server from, you've got to download it. So I'll go ahead and download this, the 64-bit version of Windows. It's really small. It's only 3 megabyte compressed. This is an executable file. And this is compiled. I wrote this from scratch. And this compiled app is really critical to all of the functioning. It's actually the app that directly talks to your CNC controller, whether it's Gerbil or TinyG or something else like SmoothieWare or Marlin or what have you. It's compiled to make sure it's really fast. It does speak the WebSocket protocol, and that when you actually then want to tell ChiliPeppr the IP address, it's actually binding in over a WebSocket so that it has full sort of socket level connectivity. You'll see I'm not actually connected to any of my ports right now. I'm going to go ahead and connect to this one. And when you connect, it sort of sends different configuration commands into the device. Let's make sure that we're still running okay. Yeah, we still are. So, you know, there you go. If I went ahead and launched it locally, though, I'll show you. I don't have anything connected to this box, but I'll just show you for the heck of it. Here, I'm gonna launch it right here. Ooh, I think I'm running right now. Okay, so let's launch this. And it is just like a DOS command prompt. Ooh, this is an old version of the app. Let's extract to a different directory. We'll call it Bart. We'll run it from here. There we go. So notice that even my Windows security alert saying, hey, do you want to allow this through the firewall? And that's just the default setting on your Windows box. But you have to, because this really is a server. And it's running on port 8989 on this local box. But notice it's saying there's no serial ports to list. That's just because I don't have any you know, Gerbil or TinyG device connected to my laptop here at the office. But it doesn't matter because you can connect to any IP address. If I had the IP address to Pumping Station 1's network right now, and Bart had maybe shared his serial port JSON server, I could connect to that right now as well. Are there any questions on that? Just the whole serial port JSON server and why you need that along with the browser? Because I do think that's one of the things that throws people for a loop initially.
So is that just a very low-level serial port generic to all TinyG, Gerbil, and anything else that comes along?
It is. It is really low level. In fact, it's a little bit brainless. It just looks at the local serial ports and just tries to iterate through them. The only part that gets a little bit, so like if you were to just hook up some random Arduino with some firmware app you wrote, you can just do that with serial port JSON server. There's nothing fancy. It's like connecting a cool term or some kind of terminal window, some terminal app to your serial port. It is that simple. The only higher level thing, which is really this pull down, is this buffer flow, where I've built in some features to make it be a little bit intelligent about how to flow commands into the device slow enough so it doesn't overfill it. But that's not a lot of extra work. Here, I gotta disconnect from there, and then I gotta reconnect this. Okay, cool. So let's set that. Okay, good. Okay, so there's all this fun jogging that you can do. What I'd want to kind of do though is actually just run a job right now. So for the heck of it, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Since I'm guessing people are familiar enough with G-code, let's go ahead and hit play. Okay, so the first thing that's happening is, notice in the lower right corner, it's saying 511, 506. It is now sending commands to the TinyG, and that's at least the one I'm doing, but we'll show you Gerbil in a second because it works pretty similarly. But you notice all of the data coming back from the TinyG. I'm gonna go ahead and unfilter right here, so you can kind of see all of the data. TinyG sends back a lot of JSON formatted content. Now, I try to hide all of that from you so that you're not having to see like all the sausage making. You can see it in a cleaner visual way, but look, it's showing the velocity it's running at, the feed rates in real time, which line it's executing. Is it running an arc or a straight line? Is it in millimeter or inches? What coordinate layer system it is in? G54, which is this whole set of layers right here, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But notice I'm already down to 0. I already finished running. Boom. Project's done. It took about 1 minute to run. And just for the heck of it, see the estimated time? 1:56. Let's run it again. That estimator, well, it sounds like it was off by about 54 seconds. So, let's run it again. I'm going to zoom in because that tool head is moving based on the XY data, being sent back from the controller. That only happens roughly every 250 milliseconds. So you really only get about 4 coordinate updates per second. If you start going beyond that, there's almost just too much data going back and forth between the controller and the front end user interface. But what I love is that sometimes when you're running stuff, you really want to zoom in close and sort of see how it's running. And all of that is nicely doable. If you want to get back to kind of your home position, you can always click this little eyeball icon. You can also turn off this little camera view if you don't want the screen moving. That basically keeps the tool head centered. I'm going to hit play again. It's so fun to watch it. Of course, it's more fun if this is actually moving a real tool head. Okay, now this is interesting because it's just sitting there doing nothing, and I believe I have to just hit resume. There we go. So that is one of those things, by the way, that's really different between TinyG and Gerbil is this feed hold and cycle start and queue flush. I use these a lot, and those don't necessarily exist in the Gerbil space. They sort of kind of do. But let me show you some of the things while this is running. See, these little check boxes are pretty meaningful. Sent, queued, written, completed, executed. And if you mouse over this, it'll kind of explain to you what it's doing. And, for the most part, you may never care about it. But let's say that for some reason, you just had to stop because you just broke a bit. You just broke an end mill. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's broken end mill. I just was running my job for an hour. What am I going to do? You kind of want to try to fix it. And so if you look through this, you're like, okay, wait, I actually this is showing too many lines run. The reality, though, is you're on line 278 where you stopped, or so you actually could, like, in ChiliPeppr, and this is pretty unique because I don't know any other apps that are doing this today, is you can go back to the line that you died on, mouse over it, and say, set as new start position. And when you hit play, it picks up. Here, I got to do it this way. No, that actually is correct. But I got to, sorry, let me wipe it and restart.
So is wipe clearing out the planner?
Yes. Wipe clears out the whole planner. What's funny is I actually think I would have just ruined my job because you have to be really picky about how you do this. So right now, everything's stopped. I have nothing in the queue. Right, I've wiped it, and everything can move again. In fact, I could even raise my Z right now. For instance, I'll go up 1 millimeter on the Z, okay, and then I'll go back down. So I'm going to mouse over this and say set as a new start position. Although right now I'm going to say send G code to move to this position. So see how the tool had just moved there. And now when I hit start, it should start from line 278. I say that this is actually a little bit of a controversial feature that I added. I needed it because I would screw up jobs a lot, and so I wanted it. But it's really finicky because you have to really know what you're doing to try to pick it up. But I know a lot of people who have felt like it saved their job. So, you know, that's why it was worth showing. If,
So
by the way, oh, go ahead.
Can you just move in X and Y first to get? I see a lot of people try to do jobs, but then they do a ramp move to the place they're supposed to be, which like could ramp right through some clean surface.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a
Okay.
ramp, like a Z angle move.
So let's say that I want to get back to this spot, maybe along the lines of what you just said. I'm at a Z of 3, but just to be safer, I'll go up to a Z of 10. Okay, so I don't go through any material. And then there is this little button right here that says jog mode. And this I've never seen anywhere else either. But jog mode, frankly, you got to hold down the control key. Why is it not letting me do it? That's so weird. It's not letting me jog mode it. Hold on. I think that this screen share is screwing up my ability to. So maybe I won't be able to show it, but let's just manually jog then.
So the jog mode, you're just gonna like click on an XY position and it's gonna go there?
Yeah, when you hold down control key, it shows a tiny version of this cone, and as you move your mouse, you can then just control click and it moves to it, and it's super sweet. I'm not sure why it's not letting me do it right now though. Oh, you know what? Maybe I have to have this guy on. No. Well, anyway, here, let's turn on inspect mode, which is equally pretty cool. Inspect mode lets you zoom in on your object. And again, this is, I've never seen any app do this. And this was a lot of extra coding to get this to work. But see how I'm sort of mousing over the line and it's trying to draw a cylinder. And it's showing you the direction of the move with that little red arrow. But it's telling you which line of G code that represents. And, you know, so if it's broken here, I could almost just go to that line, which is line 279, and then say set as new start position, right? So there's a lot of ways to try to tie the 3D viewer back to the G code that make using this, hopefully you'll never have to use inspect mode, but if you do, there's a lot of things to try to help you get back to fix your job. And I think that especially for the maker community, you know, us hobbyist guys, we're not running jobs that are repetitive over and over and over where this stuff doesn't happen. We're running one-offs all the time. We're all prototyping stuff. And so you're inevitably going to run into problems, and your software needs to try to like help you through it. So, you know, let's actually say move to this position. And so I just did that. Now, you know, it did go to 0, and that is the danger. Yeah, right? It goes to X, Y, Z here. And so that's where you may instead want to just move to that X, Y position. So you got to kind of watch out for that stuff. Although, frankly, I always set my Z0 as the top of my workpiece, so I would have been fine. Some other nice stuff is if we just kind of look at this G code item here. I'm going to just scroll back to the top. By the way, this scroll bar on the left is a percentage scroll bar, meaning drop down to the 90th percent, the 80th, the 80%, the 70% location, just to kind of let you scan. Whereas this scroll bar here is actually from the browser. But because you can't render tens of thousands of lines at once, you'll notice that you kind of get to the bottom and it sort of has to re-add a new block of lines. That's to make the browser be able to deal with this kind of data. So maybe a little bit of funkiness here because of that, but that's why you've got this scroll bar. You can step through your G code line by line with this little step mode. Sorry, it's using 279 as the start position, but I'm actually technically sending this to the machine as I step. So this is pretty fun to watch your machine step with actual G code. And notice that the check mark quickly goes yellow to blue to green to black. I mean, it's kind of hard to see it transition to all those colors. But if this were hooked up to a real machine, you'd see it kind of chugging one at a time. Going backwards is controversial as well, because on an arc, I'll show you what happens. It's actually, you don't want to go backwards on arcs. In fact, notice it's not really going backwards because arcs are very directional. So just keep that in mind. The feed rate, by the way, this is really handy. You can only do this at the beginning of the job, but if you, let me scroll back to the top. If you're not sure about your feeds and speeds, like this is running at feed rate of 300 on this line and then feed rate of 800. But if I want to bump those, you can just start hitting the up arrow. Notice it puts blue, and if you mouse over it, it shows you the original feed rate. I gotta say, I use this all the time because I don't really know what I like, and I run an air job, and then I'm like, oh, that was too slow or that's too fast, and I come back and I use this feed rate like mad, and then I just hit play again. So I just bumped it to a feed rate of 3, and this thing should just go screaming fast now. Although I may already be at my max. No, I'm actually at 2,300 millimeters per minute, so that's just screaming fast. Super handy. I actually almost couldn't live without this feed rate feature. I'd love to, by the way, and maybe I could use anybody's help on this, is let you adjust that during the middle of a job dynamically. That is not possible yet in ChiliPeppr. It's not possible in any CNC software in the maker community today. It is available in Mach 3, and so I think we eventually need to get there with our sort of maker community software.
Does TinyG have built-in feed rate override?
It does in a beta version, and so that once that's actually out production, it almost certainly then will be available at least to TinyG users. The thing is, though, you could do a feed rate override dynamically just in the ChiliPeppr layer. And let's say you have like 10 lines queued in Gerbil or in TinyG, but ChiliPeppr is able to dynamically change it. You would just have to wait till the 11th line is executed to adjust on the fly. So you can do it without the firmware knowing about it or having that feature. The reason you would want the firmware to have it is so that it changes immediately. As opposed to waiting as it sort of winds through the buffer.
Yeah, I think you get much better user feedback if you, as soon as you change it, you feel the difference. So I think they're trying to get it to both Sunny and Alden are trying to get it below like 20 millisecond response time.
Yes, I agree. I think that I've heard from both camps that they would like to add that as a feature. So I'm excited for when that happens, and I'll make sure that ChiliPeppr is the first software to let you toggle it. But to some degree, ChiliPeppr may just do it on its own and not wait for the firmware guys. It's just a matter of which feature gets which level of priority. So, oh, go ahead.
A lot of the 3D printer senders have feed rate override. But it's like on long moves and a big buffer, sometimes it takes a while to see it actually happen.
Yeah, exactly. It is nice. I mean, there's also a camp out there, though, in the CNC community where they say you should not allow dynamic feed rate override, because if you've referred to your feeds and speeds manual, like on the correct spindle rate and feed rate for milling aluminum, you should not have to adjust that feed rate, because it actually means that you're messing with the best feeds and speeds that are mathematically calculated. So, it kind of depends. I think, though, for the maker community, we don't really refer to those feeds and speeds a lot. We actually base it on eyeballing it and what the end mill sounds like as it's burrowing through your pile of MDF or your plywood or your acrylic. So I want us to get there soon. We just aren't. So, you know, some of the things that I think are sort of like cool, cutesy, fun features are like when you mouse over the G code and you can see what these mean. And when I was new to this world, I had no idea what a G21 meant. And it was like, what the heck? Who invented these stupid G codes? So that's why I put that in there. And it's actually really helped me now know, you know, now I have G21 and G20 memorized, sadly. G90, you know, absolute programming versus relative programming, which is G91. G64, I actually still just do not know what this means. I don't know if you know what it means, Bart, but
Cancel something I don't know what it means.
right, exactly. So who cares? Well, and I barely know what this means. You know, I do know what it means, but like it also never matters to me because as far as I'm concerned, Gerbil and TinyG don't even really care about tool radius compensation. I mean, you can do it. In fact, I actually think Gerbil has better support for tool radius than TinyG, but I just don't think people use it because typically this only matters if you have an automatic tool changer, and nobody does in the maker community. So I don't know, when's Inventables coming out with a automatic tool changer?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we don't need that G
I
code.
mean, we have spindles that you can buy for $300, but you put an automatic tool changer on it, and it costs $2,300. It's
Right.
just
It'd be cool to have somebody, when maybe, you know, somebody will come out with an open source automatic tool changer, but you know, even things like G0, whatever, it's fun stuff to kind of do that. So I think for people who are newbies, that's really helpful. Hopefully, by the way, you never really need to go into these settings. I would actually recommend you leave all the defaults these days because I think I've dialed in the best balance at this point. Early on, I wasn't even sure what the best balance was. And then you can always collapse little widgets. The serial port console, I find this really handy. When I had software that would hide this from me, I got really frustrated because if you want to just do something like G0x0, you just type it and it just moved to 0 on the x-axis and everybody's happy. If I want to go to Y0, same deal. And so I try to make this software really flexible where things are nice and fun and lots of buttons, but also I don't sort of hide things from you to sort of complicate your life. If there's something you want to type in custom like $, you know, to see data come back. So, you know, I think I've got a good balance on this. Okay, now over here in the axes, this there's a lot going on here, and the big thing really is jogging. You're going to do a lot of jogging. I always feel like there's two parts to your milling job. There's the jogging to sort of get, you know, set your Z0 or set your X and Y0. I mean, if you're going to mill out something off of like a nice piece of oak, you don't want to mess it up, or some bamboo, whatever it is, you spend all this money, you really, you know, you're going to want to go like maybe right to the lower left corner, or maybe you got to center it because like this job is the centered. You got to figure out what the centering is. So I think we all spend a lot of energy getting that correct, and then once it is, then you hit play. So I try to put a lot of effort into making the jog controls nice. Of course, you can use the keys on the keyboard. In ChiliPeppr, notice that it's at a 1, meaning you would move 1 millimeter, or if you're in inch mode, you're moving 1 inch. There's obviously a big difference between 1 millimeter or 1 inch. So just keep that in mind. Let's resume. So now I'm in inch mode, but if you hold down, oh here, let's move to 0.1. If you hold down the shift key, you are, oh, that's weird. You are technically moving 1 inch instead of 0.1 inch. So there's accelerator keys, but a lot of those are described in this little mouse over menu. So there's a lot of effort to try to give you like keyboard shortcut keys. There is this cool little feature to let you scroll to jog around, or even I have a touch screen, so I'll show you what it does really quick. I'm going to just sort of jog around in a circular pattern. and then I'm going to let up on my finger, and it actually then cancels all the commands. So actually, let me switch back to millimeter mode, and then I'm going to go to 0. Let's resume.
Yeah, high Z.
Okay, so let's try that touch jog again, just for the heck of it, because it's kind of fun. You know, I think we're not getting enough feedback in real time here because of the screen share just burning through my CPU. So whatever. You're not going to use this area, though. In a way, I would say this flopped. It was a cool feature that didn't work. However, it was written so that somebody could rework ChiliPeppr into a phone application, and you could use your phone as a remote pendant. Because I think a lot of us now have old smartphones that have really nice touch screens, but the batteries don't last long on them anymore, but they're just sort of sitting in a drawer. And so the thought is, why not use that as a remote pendant now? It obviously has a great browser on it, like Chrome, the touch screen. Why not just, you know, do stuff like this? So this touch scroll was really done for that. It's just that nobody's gone ahead and written like a remote pendant workspace yet. But we'll get there.
So now you can jog by clicking in the work area too, right?
So yeah, you mean up in the 3D viewer?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to show you earlier with that control key. That's this little guy. You can. It's super sweet. I just don't know why it's not working right now.
Okay. I find that was one of my favorite features when I
agree with you. It is one of my favorite features now, and I'm not sure why nobody's ever done it before in any other software. It's not even in Mach 3.
Well, you just want to make sure that that last hour fits on your workpiece, so you just go click over there, and it just races over there.
Exactly. And what I like is that it only does it in the XY axis. It does not try to do the Z, so that you're safe. Oh, there it is. I hit refresh, and now it's there. So see that control click to XY jog here? So just for the heck of it, I'm going to go up in my Z. Here, I got to hit white. So go up in my Z. You know, because I'm so anal about making sure I have clearance on my workpiece. And now I'll hold down the control key, and I'm going to go right to the tip of the ChiliPeppr right there. And there it is. It just moved. It is so fun and so useful. Because when I'm trying to like align my end mill like to the lower left corner of a workpiece, I do tend to sort of, you know, maybe go to the extent based on those little dashed lines, and then I'm like, okay, I know where it thinks it's supposed to be, and then maybe I just kind of eyeball it and set my 0. You know, so I'm gonna now set my machine 0, and then everybody's happy. You know, so I'm glad to hear that you're finding it useful too. Okay, so I've kind of talked about these units. Remember, the accelerator keys are a big deal. The custom, this was a little risky whether to do it this way or not versus the way some of the other software did it. I actually kind of like it, but let's say I want to move, you know, 4.75 millimeters to the left. What you do is you go to custom, you type the number in, and you hit enter, and then you would say X to the negative and move. I find that this is really useful because if I'm maybe measuring a piece and then I'm like, okay, I got to move in the Y, you know, 16 millimeters. I just type in 16 and then I'll go forward in the Y. So pretty fun. Let's say I want to zero out just the Y now. I could just do that and not zero out the X. So a lot of people don't realize that these little pull down menus kind of give you per axis sort of zeroing out capabilities as opposed to these buttons, which really do all X, Y, Z axes at the same time. So just keep that in mind. You know what's funny too on the homing of the machine? From the data I've gathered, only about 15% of all people in the maker community actually have limit switches where they can home their machine. It really means nobody has limit switches, nobody cares, and so this button is not that useful. So if you have limit switches, Bart, I don't know if you have some or if your stuff at Pumping Station 1, you're in the minority.
Yeah, we put them on almost all of our machines.
Do they come default on the Xcarve now, or are those an option?
No, but it's an option, and most people get it.
Yeah.
The time that we're running the Gerbil with the G Shield right now,
Yeah.
and it has virtually no. Well, it has. It's just you're just plugging straight into the Arduino at that point when you're working with the limit switches. There's no filtering, so you're lucky to get there on most machines without a false trigger.
Right, and that's
then,
maybe why I find that people just don't use them much. So maybe people try it and then they just don't connect it. I don't know.
well, the other thing is, so on our new controller, the X controller, we've got some good filtering and some real easy to hook up limit switches where you don't have to jam like 6 ground wires into the same terminal block.
Right.
Yeah, you got to.
Apparently, your SEO's not good with Inventables.
Well, we're not selling it yet.
Yeah, I've only seen it. Yeah, in your blog or in the forum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one works pretty well, and you can leave the limits on full time then.
Yeah.
So that really comes in handy. But then the other thing is how accurate are the limit switches? So if they're really accurate, then you start getting into the really understanding the G54 and all that, which I'd say the same percentage understand that.
Right. I agree with you. And so, maybe it's worth talking about that a little bit because it's all related. Frankly, I did not understand these work coordinate systems forever, and I didn't want anything to do with them. And there was enough feedback with advanced users of ChiliPeppr that they wanted something better that I was like, can I try to make it be like Adobe Photoshop where it's like layers? Because I love the layers inside other apps like Photoshop, and that's what I tried to do here. And I think I've gotten some success with this, where people kind of understand a little bit better visually what's going on. But by default, most stuff just runs out of machine coordinates in ChiliPeppr just to keep it simple. It's basically there's one layer, it's the machine layer, everybody's happy. But like on Gerbil and TinyG, you're technically always in G54 whether you like it or not. And that was hard for me to understand as a user as well. But then you just have other choices of other layers. They just happen to have lame numbers attached to them. Like, to me, this is just a really nerdy way of labeling layers. So, it's pretty fun, I think, to change layers inside ChiliPeppr now. Notice as I do it, it's really just putting the command. That's maybe actually educated a lot of people that it's that simple. But if you want to set your G57 0, look at what it's actually doing. I find this command to be really unintuitive. G10, L2, P4. Like, nowhere does it even say G57, and that kind of pisses me off. But P4 is really layer 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And thus it equals G57. Well, great. Whoever designed that should be shot, but so be it.
So yeah, we're trying to get Easel works in G53 space, even though Gerbil is really in G54. So it's doing like the P0 on that last command. Right. I think people are going to come around. I think it's really important that they understand it. So back to the limit switches, you have a total destructive job, and you don't want to go through all that other crap you did. If you were working in G54 in the right way and you touch off on those limits, then you don't have to do any more setup. You're just like, you're back to where you were.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that is what's nice about them, is that if I home my machine and it's now homed to the lower left corner or the lower right corner, I guess lower left corner is the default place to home to. I don't know. You would know better.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it depends. Like if I'm doing a clock face, I'll home on the center of the piece of wood. So,
but your limit switches will tend to go lower
okay, so
left corner, right?
the limit switches are really weird. It really doesn't matter because G54 is going to fix it for you. So
Yeah.
some places, you know, they'll machine to negative machine space just for the hell of it. I don't know why. It's like traditional. And then if G54 is set up right, it's going to do all its homing, and then it's going to say you're at 0, 0. But then you're going to look at your machine space. So it doesn't matter. You can home wherever.
And so, right, that's the thing is I've sort of gotten this notion that what you should do, I always would reset my machine 0 to whatever I was working on. So if I'm going to work on a clock and I need to go to the center of my piece of wood, I would just move to the center visually with my end mill by, you know, control clicking around until I got happy in ChiliPeppr, and then I would set machine 0 like that. And everybody was happy. And in fact, my machine 0 and my G54 layers are always identical. I still actually do it that way. Sorry, I just got a text there. And so, you know, I still think a lot of people do it that way, and I recommend you go ahead and do that for a long time. It's going to work just fine for you. But as you get more sophisticated, try to start, you know, creating a G55 layer, G56, and hopefully these little techniques help. G92, by the way, a lot of people use, but there is a lot of controversy that should go away. You shouldn't use it. I tend to not use it. Bart, I'm not sure. Do you find yourself using G92 much?
I'm trying to stop.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry, let me put this texting thing.
G92 is such a blunt instrument. It destroys all your other layers temporarily.
Well, and that's the thing, right? The way you see it, it's green, and G56 is green because it really is a toggle on-off. But you're right. I mean, it's sort of doesn't necessarily ruin your other layer, but it does override everything, which is why I put it up at the top. Anyway, probably enough about work coordinate systems. I think people really need to play with those. I do think, by the way, I didn't show you this. The simulator is probably one of the super useful tools that people really like in ChiliPeppr. Because once you've come out of your cam, you really do kind of want to get a feel for, okay, well, what's first? You know, where's it going to go first and second and third? Did the cam efficiently create it? I do think a lot of cam packages don't let you simulate. You know, so it's at least a consistent way to try to simulate. Now, what I will say is, for now, those light blue lines are not being simulated fully. Only the start and end points are. So that's why you're seeing that red line not actually follow the curve. One of these days that will actually get fixed, but I'll just let you guys know for now that's a little bit of a work in progress. Of course, you can speed it up. And that is really nice because, you know, you want to kind of say, okay, yeah, I got a good idea of what it's going to do. I don't think you need these much other than people who have really gigantic machines. They, you know, went really massive. You're going to want your grid size to be bigger. Mine's roughly the size of my machine, but some people have needed, you know, to go that big because they went hog wild with their Shape Oko or something. Also, if you're finding during running a job that your computer CPU is just dying on the vine, that 3D viewer is pretty heavy. So you can disable the 3D viewer while everything else still keeps running. And I have had to do that, and you'll see it'll say disabled right there. I've had to do that on some really intense jobs where there's tons of tiny little G-code moves. So it really depends. I do a lot of circuit board milling, which is not heavy duty in terms of the amount of G-code. So it really depends on the type of job you're running, whether that's an issue or not. So that's probably most of the stuff that's visual. You know, again, lots of little things. If you have a fourth axis, like an A axis, that's handy. I do have a fourth axis on my 3040 CNC, and I actually am starting to use it more and more. You can show the machine coordinates. So some of the stuff I'm showing you here is not in the Gerbil workspace, but hopefully we'll get that in there soon. Jarrett Luft is actually the kind of the keeper of the Gerbil version. I am generally the keeper of the Tiny G version, and then Jarrett and I kind of collaborate to merge features. You can get a text message at the end of your job. That is the only area where ZipWhip, my main day job, and ChiliPeppr ever sort of cross the streams. And of course, this is all free, courtesy of ZipWhip. ZipWhip's footing the bill for those texts, but you know, big deal. Adds up to a few bucks a month. But this is pretty fun, actually, especially if it's a long job and you know you run it in the basement and it's got a couple hours to go. Auto leveler, I gotta say, this feature right here is actually the reason I did ChiliPeppr and embarked on this gigantic journey, was because I do a lot of circuit boards. A circuit board typically has 0.3 of a millimeter of warpage from like the lower left corner to the upper right. It just depends. It's the fiberglass has a little bit of warpage. You can try and get it as flat as possible, but the easiest thing to do is probe it and then auto adjust the Z code. And if you're really worried about a lot of warpage, you can actually change your grid to have even more points probed and higher resolution. That starts to get a little crazy though, but this is probably one of the most unique and powerful features of ChiliPeppr is this auto leveler. And I think it's the reason a lot of people sort of was like, they were like, oh my God, ChiliPeppr just changed the game for CNC apps out there. I'm not even sure Mach 3 has an auto leveler. I don't know. Maybe Bart, you know, but
I don't think it does. It'll do a Z probe grid, and I think you can pre-process, but I don't think it's all built into one thing.
Right, because after you run this, and it'll take a while to run, you then have to it modifies your G code, but you have to sort of resend it to the workspace, and then this G code here gets swapped out with the new G code, and all of your Z's, frankly, all of your Z's and really every line gets a Z added to it. It's like that Z3 would get changed to maybe be like a Z3.1 or Z3.05698. It's pretty fancy, and there is a lot of math behind this because you actually have to calculate out. You almost got to go back to your high school geometry class and sort of remember how to figure out where a point intersects a plane and stuff like that. It was crazy to go back and write that code, but I am thrilled with it. I think it did change the game for a lot of people, and it's especially for the people that mill circuit boards. This is almost like the must-have tool. The macro, I think this is highly powerful. I am finding myself writing macros all the time. Even if you just want to like download your G code, which is pretty rare, but if you for some reason modified it in here, or even like maybe it got auto leveled, you can go ahead and like load that macro, and then it's letting you download your file. I mean, it's just, this is all JavaScript, and if you know JavaScript, a macro is just JavaScript, and you kind of do anything you want inside these macros. There's even a macro in here that lets you like control an Arduino in parallel to like your Gerbil or Tiny G device to turn a laser on and off. That's just all sample code to kind of get you started. Even just if you want to programmatically send G code, this is what it looks like. So let's go and let's just say we want to we want to do a G0 move and move to X0, Y0. I'll go ahead and run it, and lo and behold, I moved to X0, Y0, although why does it visually look like I'm not at X0, Y0? Oh, I know why. Because it update. So I'll move to X10, Y10. And there I am. So that's just the way to programmatically do stuff. But like, let's say you want to put this in a for loop. You know, if you're a coder, for var, you know, counter equals 0, counter less than 9, counter plus plus. And then you're going to actually like send G code based on this. Say plus counter. We'll say plus counter. We'll run it. And it didn't like it. So you get the error down here. I'm missing something. Double quote plus counter, double quote plus, oh, there's a plus sign missing right here. That worked. No, it didn't work. Well, anyway, I don't want to get stuck on this, but I guess that's the nature of writing macros, is you run into lots of errors, but either way. So JScut, I'm going to show this one a little bit. Bart, have you ever used JScut?
No.
So JScut's pretty fun because it is a CAM package in the browser. It's free. And Todd Fleming wrote this roughly around the same time I launched ChiliPeppr. So we almost like sort of launched within the same week or two, and we kind of got a hold of each other, and we're like, wow, these tools complement each other pretty nicely. So he lets you inside JScut actually save direct to ChiliPeppr. There's actually a ChiliPeppr button in there. And when you save it from JScut to ChiliPeppr, it will, you hit refresh, and then it shows up in this little pull-down menu. And so if you if you use Inkscape to draw some SVGs, you can bring them into JScut. JScut will generate the cam moves, and then you bring them into ChiliPeppr, and you can run them. So it's a little bit, I suppose, maybe if you're using Easel, Easel is sort of JScut plus ChiliPeppr all combined. So like, let's say we're going to mill out the word Bart. I believe I have to convert this to curves, object to path, and I think that's all I really have to do. Save it out. I don't want to really get sucked down too deep into the bowels of JScut, but I will say I find myself using it a lot, so maybe for the sake of everybody at pumping station 1, this is pretty valuable to have this in your arsenal. So I'm going to go open it locally, and we'll go to ChiliPeppr SVG. Okay, and then I'm going to maybe just I'll just pocket around it. So create operation, and sorry, I want to basically do, I guess, an outside. And it'll go 1/4 inch deep. I like to actually work in millimeters. I hate working in inches. That sounds weird because I am an American. So I'm going to go 1 millimeter deep. And you can already sort of see the yellow path, and then you say simulate G code, and it's sort of showing you, his version of a simulator. It's very odd, but you can rotate that. I don't think a lot of people realize that. But let's then go back and do the whole thing. So I'm going to shift click the other letters. Also then do an outside operation. We'll go 1 millimeter deep. And again, we'll simulate. At this point, I'm happy. This is my operation. And I'm going to go now save the G code to, I'll call it Bart.G code. Save it to ChiliPeppr. And the only thing I would say here is you got to make sure you're logged in the upper right corner of ChiliPeppr. You do not have to be logged in ever, but for this feature you do, because it's actually saving it to your cloud storage account that comes with every ChiliPeppr login. It's just automatic. Frankly, it's Google providing that capability. Oh, I should not have opened this. That was unnecessary. I'm gonna just go back here and hit refresh, and Bart should be in here, and here it is. And Bart will now load in the 3D viewer, and here it is. So let's simulate it. So it'll kind of go on the left side of it'll obviously do the B first because that was my first operation. You can see, though, I will say I'm not that thrilled with the G code that it generates because I'm at a times 1000 and it's going so slow. If you look, the little red lines are so tiny. I actually think JScut does not really do an efficient job generating G code. However, in a pinch, it's really a great tool. I mean, you guys saw how quickly I just did that, and I never left the browser. So pretty worthwhile tool.
What?
Did he generate the Bart in Inkscape?
Yeah.
And then, what were the parameters for fill and stroke in Inkscape when you saved these in this?
Yes, if I reduced the curves in Inkscape, I could sort of coerce JScut into being more efficient. If I heard your question correctly.
Yeah.
Does fill and stroke make a big difference when you're generating SVGs?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if I turn on this this node version and I look at the individual, like these little nodes, I could turn those curves to straight lines with one of these filters, I think. You got to play around with it, but you absolutely can get this to be more efficient by sort of doing more effort in Inkscape.
Does JScut do any arc segments, even if it's a circle?
I believe JScut is only doing straight lines. I have never seen JScut export an actual G2 or G3 arc.
Yeah, I think Easel's the same way.
And I think the reason is he uses this library. It's pretty famous now, but it lets you do inflates and deflates. But it only supports straight lines, and so I think that's he only spits out G1s and G0s. In fact, if you look, I make G0s be green, and you can see even his moves where he goes up in the Z to move to the next letter are blue. So he's not really generating sort of standard G code. Those should be G0s. He's just doing everything as G1s. You don't see any cyan lines in this, which would be G2s and G3s. But that's okay. It does the job. So that's JScut. The Eagle board import really is only relevant to people who do PCB milling. You can bring your board direct into ChiliPeppr, and so it kind of brings in a default board, and then the blue lines are the traces that it puts around it. This is really, I love using it. I mean, it's so fun, but it's actually showing you, like, you know, the signal name and showing you the path of everything. It's pretty fun. So this has turned out to be really useful for a lot of folks because it's the only software out there that lets you inflate your paths or deflate your paths. And in this case, I'm using the same library that Todd's using in JScut to inflate and deflate milling paths. So powerful stuff. I'm guessing not many folks, though, in this video chat are going to be doing PCB stuff.
So does inflate mean just do offset from a shape?
Yeah, inflate just correct. It means do an offset, like expand the shape outward by however many millimeters or inches.
So you're doing
I could actually, and I just haven't done it yet, but the thought is to actually add some features that are JScut-like directly into ChiliPeppr. For instance, why can't you just say select all and scale this right inside ChiliPeppr? And I could. It's just, is that the right place to put effort? You know, or do you want to just let the CAM applications do that? And I think Easel's maybe a good example of an app that does kind of combine CAM with G-code sending. So, you know, it's debatable. I guess I'd rather focus on things like this touch plate widget, which I think you know, need more features added to it.
I think Easel's trying to hide all this stuff on purpose. You know, you don't even see DROs in Easel.
Right. Yeah, and I think ChiliPeppr is definitely taking the opposite stance of give a powerful tool with all the stuff that you really need to manage, but maybe still try to make it pretty, make it clean, hide a lot of stuff, and sort of let the user reveal things as they go. You know, how often do you really need the touch plate? Well, frankly, I use the touch plate all the time now. Although sometimes I find myself manually turning the Z-axis lead screw or stepper motor to sort of, you know, and using the paper trick, but the touch plate is just a way better way to do it. You could type in the command manually to trigger the probe. That's really all this thing does, but this sure is nice. And a lot of people adore ChiliPeppr simply for this widget right here.
It's a very hard command to remember.
It really is. And, you know, it's
G38.2, is it?
Exactly. And I can't run it right now because I would need the touch plate actually in place, and I'm not sitting at the machine. But you're right. It's a hard command to remember. And not only that, this is going to get tweaked so that right now this sets your machine coordinates, so it does a G53. It should allow you to run it in your work coordinate system as well. And it should just be smart enough to say, oh, Bart's in G55 right now. That's the layer I'll reset. Or, oh, Bart's in G58, right? That needs to be done, but we'll get there. That's actually a pretty easy next step.
Can you read the status of the touch plate from TinyG at any given time?
No, sadly you cannot.
Okay,
I wish you could, because I would show it green or red right here visually.
Yeah, because the ShopBot allows you to do a test touch.
Oh, you know what? ShopBot is using TinyG, but they're using, I think, G2, or they're doing a new version. The G2, which is actually what I'm connected to, does let you do that.
Okay. Well, the ShopBot, the real ShopBot, I don't think they have a TinyG in the real ShopBot.
Oh, okay.
The
newer ShopBot does.
The little handheld thing does.
Yeah, you got it. But you know, Mach 3 lets you see the real-time status, and so I've requested that as well.
Yeah, because a failed Z touch due to electrical misconnection
is a problem.
Is a big problem.
It's a big problem. Yeah, it's very scary. Every time I run the touch plate, I always get a little bit nervous.
So we want to have it so that you can say, okay, touch the puck to the bit, and then your bit lights up green. You're like, okay, you're safe to run now. You know that you remember to connect.
Totally. And actually, what I always do is I do start my touch plate and I manually trigger the alligator clip to the the ground.
So you do it twice.
And then just to test it, and I have my hand ready to go on feed hold, just in case.
Well, it should stop. If you do it twice, it just sets the wrong 0 once.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then you just run it again.
Or then you get scary and you yank out the touch plate.
Exactly. Or you hit your e-stop. Or you pull the plug on your power supply. I've done that a few times. this is the most recent new feature, is this Arduino Atmel firmware uploader. What a lot of people maybe don't realize is that the Arduino crew out of Italy caught wind of ChiliPeppr and serial port JSON server, and they got so excited that they have now contributed to ChiliPeppr. And that the new Arduino, it's called create.arduino.cc. This is their upcoming web IDE. They're abandoning their Java desktop app. And I think that's a real sign of the times. Remember, UGS, University Code Center, is Java-based. So has been the Arduino IDE. They are fully abandoning Java and moving to the browser, just like ChiliPeppr sort of moved to the browser. And so it's a sign of the times. They needed access to the serial port, though, just like ChiliPeppr did. And so they saw all the work that had been done by this community, because I'm not, there's like 14 other people at last count that have been contributing to ChiliPeppr and serial port JSON server. So this really is not me doing this. This is like everybody contributing. So, and even these guys now are contributing.
So the TinyG is not Arduino based, right? I mean,
it is, actually. It is.
I thought
it is
one version.
The Arduino Due is what TinyG G2 is based on. The TinyG V8, which is what you know of, is based on an Atmel processor that I guess never did make it into an Arduino, but maybe was going to at one point. But it's a very close version of maybe the processor in the Yun. I don't remember which one.
So go back to the ChiliPeppr, and then if you're clicking on that, is this where you can just put a hex file and just say go?
You got it. So I could now just say I want to flash Gerbil firmware onto my Uno. Here's the link to the latest Gerbil 0.9i, and hit program, and it'll do it. No questions asked.
So this was contributed by Arduino?
Yep.
Wow.
It's so cool. When they contacted me, I got really excited because, of course, I adore the whole Arduino movement. And I was like, really? You guys want to use ChiliPeppr as like the basis for your new web ID? Of course. So it really is.
So you've got these fiddles, you call them.
Yeah.
Why don't you just make an uploader fiddle?
I did.
Is there one?
Right. It's right here.
No, but I mean from your base, where you don't even have to go into this /TinyG.
Oh, correct. Actually, that is coming out this weekend.
What about? Okay.
What you'll have, Bart, is just like there's a serial port fiddle or workspace, really is what I call them.
Yeah, I used the wrong term.
Right. The serial port workspace is just a subset of the TinyG workspace. It's just that serial port console and the serial port JSON server widget.
So you're going to make an uploader workspace?
Correct. And it'll look similar to this with how basic and simple. And not only that, but you'll be able to pass in the hex URL to whatever you want it to be. So if you, for instance, made a new hex file to upload, you can now do a direct link on your website or your blog or something saying, install this firmware on your Arduino, and you'll link it to this workspace, which it's just sort of a way to let the internet be able to upload files to their Arduinos easier, because there just is no easy way to do it. You have to like give people 14 steps to upload the hex file.
Right. And it got Xloader, which is like,
yeah, and Xloader is cool, but like you don't need a desktop app anymore. Just use ChiliPeppr as long as you have serial port JSON server installed.
Okay.
So that's cool, because I think now, like, this programmer is actually pretty complicated, but they did all the work. I put a little bit of tweaking, and now I have personally used this maybe 15 times since I launched it 10 days ago, because I've programmed my TinyG over and over, because I keep doing different tests on it, and Synthetos is releasing stuff, and I've programmed a bunch of Gerbil devices too for myself.
When is it going to get into that Gerbil workspace?
We got to ask Jarrett. But what I've been doing is just switching over to the TinyG workspace to program my Gerbil device, which you can do. It's not hurting anything. We'll get it in here. Here's the thing, though. It's technically in here already, and I'll show you where. So see down here in the serial port JSON server list, you just click this little icon right here, program the board's firmware, and it's not popping up. Okay, my bad. I'm sorry. I still do have to have Jarrett fix that. But you could technically just go over to TinyG and do it. And let's say that this device way down the list is technically an Arduino Uno. So let's take this guy. This is an Arduino Uno, and I could just pick Gerbil and say that and hit program. So you can do it today. Just not as clean as it should be. So, maybe the last little thing I would do, and I don't know if there's, any developers in the crowd, but every widget has this little fork widget capability. And I think this is one of the most unique things ever with a web app, of any app, even beyond just the CNC world, where you can just go ahead and, fork this work coordinate system, or this sort of jogging widget. It brings you over to JS Fiddle. Here's all the source code. Here's sort of a version of that thing running standalone by itself without all the other stuff. Here's the HTML, and here's the CSS, the cascading style sheet. And you can fork it and tweak it and modify it. And this was a core premise of building this app, to try and make it be the community's app, not John Lauer's app, not some kind of proprietary closed source stuff. It's like, this is all open source. Go crazy with it. Again, I've never seen that out there, and I think that this is partly why when I launched with the TinyG workspace, within a couple of months we had a Gerbil workspace, and it was because of this ability to just go in and take a look at the source code and modify it. I think Jarrett went in and he's like, oh my God, this is so cool. I can fork it right here. And then he started playing and dabbling, and 10 minutes later he's like, wait, I almost have like a version of the Gerbil widget ready to go. And you can even make your own version of the workspace. So let's say that. Oh, go ahead.
TinyG has totally abandoned their own sender, right?
TinyG's what?
Didn't they abandon their sender and go to totally?
They did.
Yeah.
I would say within about 6 months of ChiliPeppr launching, Synthetos decided it wasn't worth putting any more effort into their Java-based sender called TGFX, right. And they wholesale moved to just having ChiliPeppr be their main application. Yeah, which I do think is sort of a testament to ChiliPeppr's success. So if I wanted to fork this workspace and make a version called Bart, I could do that right here and say save changes and I'm done. Anybody can do that, and you now have sort of copied the entire workspace to your version, and then you can do whatever you want to it. And for those of you who've used GitHub, that is sort of the premise of GitHub, is I can go to anybody else's project, fork it, and do something on my own, and tweak it and go. And that's the world we live in now. So, but nobody's done that at a UI layer the way ChiliPeppr's done it. And that's why, in a way, I would love it if Inventables just sort of based easel on ChiliPeppr. I know that there's sort of commercial reasons people are going to do stuff differently. That's fine, but I hope we end up with actually, we already do have a Marlin workspace pretty close to functioning. We do have a SmoothieWare workspace being worked on. That would mean that ChiliPeppr is like the only app out there that supports like 4 major CNC controller platforms. And again, I think that's a testament to this open model, and really to the browser being the future. So that's most of it. I didn't cover like that Shuttle Express widget or the GPIO widget. So I could go into some of that. What do you think, Bart? How are we doing on time?
I think we're getting close to being done here. The GPIO is like a tiny G specific thing, right?
No, GPIO is a Raspberry Pi specific thing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and BeagleBone Black. Somebody, I think it was Ben Delary. He is in that list of the 14 developers I'm saying are contributing to ChiliPeppr now. He went and took serial port JSON server and forked it and made it work for GPIO ports as opposed to serial ports. So you can now run your own GPIO server and it just sort of toggles on or off GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi. I actually used this to turn all the lights on that surround my CNC machine. So it's kind of nerdy. Do I really need to do it? Should I just have made it be the light switch? But the reason I did it was that I will very often connect to my CNC machine remotely from upstairs with a camera feed, but I don't want to leave the lights on all the time. So I actually then love being able to turn the lights on remotely and then turn them off. So it is really nice. It's so nice. I may merge his code with the standard serial port JSON server, so it just comes for free. But of course, this only works on a Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone Black. You can't. There's no such thing as GPIO on a Windows box or your normal Linux box or a Mac. But really handy. I think you could even use this GPIO server to toggle a laser on or off, or toggle a fan on or off on your control board at the start of the job or at the end of the job, because you can write macros that monitor, you know, the start and end signals that then fire off commands of the GPIO. So it is pretty fun, the type of stuff you could do.
So you can have a macro watch the scrolling G code and look for an M7 and turn on a vacuum.
You got it. Absolutely.
Wow.
So there, in every widget, there is this item that says pub sub for this widget. And pub sub stands for publish subscribe. So the G-code widget publishes, when it starts playing, it publishes this signal. When it's stopped, it publishes this. So like the zip whip widget watches this signal to know when you're done running the job, and then it fires off the text message. You can yourself even trigger stops and plays and pauses if you want. And so the app, all of ChiliPeppr is sort of self-documenting. You can go look, for instance, at the pub sub for the serial port widget. There's a lot in this one, because this is where you would actually receive lines back from the controller. This is where you actually will send. So this is where you send your G code down to the controller. There's a lot. I mean, this may feel a little overwhelming, but if you're gonna write a widget, like there was a guy who extended ChiliPeppr for an art installation project where he has like 10 stepper motors running, rotating sculptures at different times and lengths to sort of create this mesmerizing visual effect. So he wrote his own little add-on widget that spoke to all of these other things, so that basically he could loop the G code over and over and over all day. You know, just, it's amazing the kind of stuff you can do.
So what's the biggest file you've ever run? Have you gone like 1,000,000 lines?
I did. The biggest file I ever ran, I actually published a YouTube video on, because I time-lapsed it, and I think it was like a 10-hour job. And it might have been upwards of 1,000,000 lines. One of the problems is that ChiliPeppr loads your file in memory. So your memory is a constraint. And let's see. Well, that clearly is not the word chili pepper.
There's a lot of these new like high-speed toolpaths where you're cutting out a little tiny thing, and it might be a 2-hour job, but it's well over 1 million lines of G code.
Yeah.
And we've seen UGS choke a little on some of those.
Right. Yeah, you know, I do think that for stuff like that, first of all, I think that's pretty rare. Although, are you starting to see that more often?
Well, yeah, because once you, well, for one thing, it was a very expensive way to generate toolpaths, but now in Fusion and Inventor, you can generate them. And what they do is they do 100% constant chip load on the tools. So these little, like we did a demo here on a X-Carve cutting mild steel using these toolpaths.
Wow. Okay.
And but they're just crazy amounts. They're all helical moves and wacky stuff.
Yeah, and I think that if that becomes more common, I need to try to solve that in ChiliPeppr as well to handle that amount of G code, because I could just do a better job spooling the file instead of just being lazy and loading it all in memory. Frankly, I took the lazy man's approach. But it was based on the fact that most G code is probably less than 5 megabytes. And if you're above that, you're in this weird zone. But what you're describing does start to make sense, because what you're describing is also kind of indicative of 3D print files. And ChiliPeppr, you know, you can load 3D print files in it, but I've seen some that are just so big it makes it choke. So I think that there's some work to be done there, but I actually don't think it's a lot of work. I think that's maybe only 4 hours worth of programming to sort of spool the content. What you do have to do, though, is if you're going to try and generate it in the 3D viewer, you almost have to normalize the data and like merge all of those lines to simplify everything. Or you only render part of the file, or you render bounding boxes or something. So that part could be a little bit of effort, but again, not too bad. Maybe you only render every 4th line or every 8th line. You sort of run a formula to decide, okay, I'll maximum only render 1 megabyte, or I'll only maximum render 100,000 lines, not 1 million, so I'll just do 1/10. I'll skip every 9 lines.
Yeah,
The rendering, the skipping lines. I would never skip lines setting the CNC controller. So you're the first person I've heard that from, other than maybe Todd Fleming. But
it's only come up in the past like 6 months, where we're pushing these really light-duty machines to do heavy materials like aluminum and steel and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you're describing, in a way, I feel like things like this G2 by Tiny G is starting to be really good for that. I did a blog post on Gerbil versus Tiny G. I know Sonny wasn't very happy about my blog post, but I actually feel like it's the only thing really out there right now that's sort of trying to describe what the differences are. And the one thing that is really going for the G2 is the fact that you can sort of queue up like 20,000 bytes of G code, as opposed to Gerbil only allows 128 bytes. It's just so tiny. And so this high-speed machining you're talking about, you want to be able to queue up huge amounts of code so that the controller can process it faster, because one line is such a tiny little move based on what you're saying. You know, you barely moved the tool head from one massive line of G code, and so you got to just queue it up even faster. And G2 runs at native USB speeds. It doesn't really, like, on the G2, you have a pull down menu for the baud rate, but it ignores it because it's native USB. So you're running at like 5 megabits per second instead of 0.1 megabit per second. And those types of things actually start to matter then with the kind of code you're talking about. So if The CNC controller is now capable of it. I do have to make sure ChiliPeppr is capable of it, and I would say I'm lagging on that, at least with the current version. But that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that kind of stuff.
Where did the name ChiliPeppr come from?
Oh, so it was sort of sitting around brainstorming what are some synonyms for being hot and awesome. And so really the word hot kind of became the word to play around with. And then it was like, oh, what are hot foods? Oh, chili peppers are hot. Let's see if the .com's available. And then, of course, the only .com that was actually available was the one without the E, and the rest is history.
Kudos.
I think it's a fun, simple, apply a food to a hardware and software, and
Perfect sense.
Perfect sense. What's that?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. Makes perfect sense if you're drunk. Oh, I should show you guys this video. I'm going to post it a little bit. I used ChiliPeppr 2 weeks ago at a company party to create a text-enabled ice luge. And so what you would do is you would text in. It would trigger.
Oh, wow.
So you can see up here the little stepper motor is rotating the cup after you text in. And I don't know if you can see way back there, but that is ChiliPeppr running up on that laptop connected to a tiny G to actually make this thing move. But it's running G code. You got to look at the detail. It's probably hard for you guys to see it. But notice how it tries to get the last drip of alcohol off of the cup. Right, there's a little tap right there. So it's running about 40 lines of G code through ChiliPeppr. Actually, I think I have the workspace right here. You guys can use it if you want. Oh, I don't remember what it's called. No. Darn it. Oh, there it is, tinyg_zipwhip. There's a widget in it that lets you text in. So, in fact, somebody could text the word zipwhip right now to this toll-free phone number, and it will actually run the G code against this tiny G. So anybody can feel free to go fork this widget, by the way. Oh, I should go fix that. But, it's just another example of sort of extending ChiliPeppr with a new workspace to do something totally crazy and wacky.
So I've always had this dream of a contest where this would be done rather than text through Twitter, where you're limited to 140 characters, but who can compress G code down so small into a text Twitter message that produces the most awesome object.
I love it. And what I would say, Bart, is instead have people do it through a text message and have it come right into ChiliPeppr and try and mill it right there.
Right, but you might, there are some pretty, you can write macros in G code with, looping back to pre-programmed areas. So you might need one hell of a little overhaul on the, I don't know if you do that with saved parameters and things like that.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, I guess if the CNC controller supports it, then I support it. But if you're saying like at a higher layer, then no,
well,
I don't.
Like Mach 3 and Linux CNC support it, and so it's true G code. But you could do like a spirograph by indexing around and stuff like that. But maybe you just limit it to a dialect of G code and like who can create the coolest object in a Twitter message.
Well, okay, so I'll give you an example that I think is is similar to what you're saying, but we are doing a party at ZipWhip in Las Vegas on September 10th. And at that party, we're going to have a CNC machine. You have to text in only up to 2 letters. So for you, you would probably text in BD. And it will mill out 2 ice cubes, each in the shape of a B and the other in the shape of a D. That will get dropped into your drink by the bartender, but it's going to mill them out right there in front of you as you text in. Now, so in a way, I'm combining my weekend passion with, my day job. And so hopefully this is like the world's first sort of text-enabled ice cube machine, just as a promo. But you're sending in up to 2 letters via text. It's reading them, and it's immediately generating the G code from a library of G code. Setting that as the active G code inside ChiliPeppr. Visually, you'll see all this on a big display, and then it's automatically running the G code just through macros, right? So all that stuff I showed you earlier with the pub sub, it's just going to trigger all of that. And so I feel like it's similar to what that guy's doing at that art installation. It's just doing it, way more, in a way more specific use case.
What are you cutting it on, your 3040 machine?
It's on the 3040. So the 3040 will have a really thin layer of ice that's about 1/4 inch thick as like the waste board. And then it's a thick sheet of ice that's about 3/4 of an inch.
Here's the little machine. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, let me swap over to the video.
There's the little bridgie.
Oh, nice.
I don't know.
Yeah, that thing looks great. That could mill some ice cubes.
Well, it's got to be waterproof, which this one is.
Yeah, you're right. To get the ice to stay longer, the bottom of the CNC machine is covered in Peltier.
There's a video. Hang on. There it is.
That's awesome. Do you want to try and drive that, or are we pretty much out of time here?
So, yeah, we could drive it. Can I share my desktop?
Yeah. So go left side of the display. There's a little green icon with an arrow. That's the screen share.
I'm got to get out of full screen, I think. I'm looking at your screen. Okay.
There. Now I'm back to my video feed.
So, what do I want to share? The screen share. Entire screen.
And actually, I got to get going in about 5 minutes, actually. I think I got to get going here.
Okay.
Maybe 10.
I don't know if I'm hooked up. And I got Gerbil. Do I have the little widget running? Yeah. Are you seeing all this?
No, you got to share your screen still. I'm still seeing your video.
Okay.
So back in the Google Hangouts video feed, you can.
You see
Okay.
it?
Yep. There you go. Nice.
So I got this running over here.
And it looks like you might want to zoom out on your browser. That I see the plus sign there. Everything just looks overly large and jumbled.
Don't
Looks like you got your browser zoom level on.
Oh. Okay. There, is that what you're talking about?
Yep, there you go. Nice.
Okay.
That looks clean.
So I think I'm there. So let me. So if I home, that's going to send $H.
Yep.
Okay. What happened?
And is it really connected? I didn't see in the lower right corner. Okay, yeah, Arduino Uno. Oh, you have it on default, the buffer. I'd set the buffer to be Gerbil, not default. So maybe disconnect. You gotta disconnect, change the pull down, and then reconnect. No, just, yeah, that checkbox, exactly. Do Gerbil. And
Yeah.
then reconnect. Okay, 0.9G. Now I guess I'd run the $H.
So that's going to give me $H there.
Yeah, there you go.
We're running.
Good job.
It's homing.
Okay, and that state is saying alarm. Click to unlock. I'm always like, why does Gerbil like to put itself into alarm mode so often?
Well, so that's one thing. The alarm really isn't clearing, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I'm home.
Well, it's still homing, right?
It's just trimming off the last little bit of homing. Now it's done homing, and I'm to idle. That's right.
Okay. Okay, there it goes. So it's got state idle. That's good.
Okay.
Why is your XYZ still at 2.148?
Why am I there?
Yeah.
That's probably because I don't know why. I should be in G54 space now.
You are in G54, so maybe. Oh, your machine coords are -297, -3, and -3. So maybe your G54 you just have set to that.
Okay, so if I'm in G54, can I? Where's the setting to?
So here's what's interesting is Jarrett has not caught up to the sophistication of the tiny G version of the workspace, and we're going to work on that, or we'll have to work on it because his zero out, you can see when you mouse over it, actually does a G92, which is not really ideal. Right, so you could manually type it in. Nobody ever remembers that. I'm amazed you remembered it. Gerbil will, yeah, there you go.
Okay, so G54 is now zeroed.
Perfect.
Okay.
So if you ran ChiliPeppr, like ran this right now, it should be okay, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm not at 0, 0. Due to the way this machine homes positive in Y.
You're okay, right? You're at the upper right corner or the lower left corner. You're not centered.
Upper left. So
do you want to try your control jog technique, the one you and I both like, where you're clicking in the 3D viewer, and let's maybe center it for everybody.
Okay.
And then run it.
What are my grids at right now?
So you're in millimeter mode. So each grid is, you could tell by the extents, that is the gray dotted lines.
Okay.
So I think you're at 10 millimeter per grid item.
So if I click here, I'm going to do like a 20-20 move.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so do I have to click jog to do that?
You can, or you can hold the control key down.
Control, click.
Yeah. So control key should show you the little cylinder. Click the jog button just to get it sort of nudged.
Okay, it's clicked.
You're having the same thing I was having. Can you, for the sake of what fixed it for me, can you just reload the whole browser? Just hit the refresh button. I'm not sure. It's a little weird, but
okay. So as far as Gerbil's concerned, I didn't do anything right there.
Correct.
Right?
You did nothing. All you did was reconnect to serial port JSON server, and everything's still fine. Because remember, serial port JSON server is the one that's actually connected. And now, oh, look at that. It looks like you had your sticky key setting get turned on by Windows.
Oh, because I held it down too long?
Maybe.
Is that here? No. Oh, what is that all about?
You know, maybe just click the jog button again. And if worse comes to worse, don't use this feature. All right, let's just jog manually. Just jog with your keyboard, or you know, click the custom setting, and yeah.
Custom is 10. That's good. Yeah, we're moving.
Yeah.
So I have a Z Pro, but I don't have it installed, so I don't want to.
Right.
Okay. So if I run a slow command, so I'm there. So like G0.
Well, you might want to do a G1 if you want to do a feed rate.
Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna give it a feed rate. Yeah. X180. Feed rate.
50. Because you're in millimeters.
Okay. And then somewhere there, these are the pause commands over here. That's feed hold?
Yes, you got it.
Okay.
The feed hold. Yep.
Okay.
You know, the only danger about feed hold is you don't really have a resume, but
I don't.
well, okay, sorry, you do. You don't have a wipe. Meaning the only way to wipe is to reset, and then you're probably going to lose your 0 position. But
I'm not sure about that. So
yeah, maybe you won't. Let's see.
This is the soft reset. Okay. So now my buffer is empty, and if I resume, I'm not going to move anywhere.
Right. Good. Okay.
Yeah, he's done. This is actually, I didn't know what you accepted, so I put 0.9G. It's really a 1.0 version with a whole bunch of features we've added with Sunny.
Okay.
Mostly, there's like some door open, parked positions, work stoppage.
Yeah, I remember seeing those in the notes. Well, and the thing is, what you just showed, I think that's maybe been one of the biggest missing things. So if that's new, that's great.
Yeah. So like, what happened to us? We had UGS lock up halfway through like a 1,000,000-line job. So what it didn't lock up, it just went into like sends one command every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
On a 1,000,000-line job, that's pretty slow.
My guess is it's the garbage collection in Java. Java is notorious for Java collection stop the world, garbage collection stop the world problems.
Yeah.
I too have run into that with serial port JSON server, but I think in my latest version I've got it nailed.
Okay.
But my bigger issue would be loading the 1,000,000 into memory in the browser. But you know, solvable.
So I've got some hardware resume, feed, and reset buttons on here. So what we would do in that case is sometimes you just hit feed hold, and then Gerbil stops, and then you hope that the garbage collector comes along, cleans things up.
Yeah, good point.
In that case, it didn't. So we killed off UGS. Well, what we were able to do is do the reset to clear the buffer and a couple of things. The problem with UGS, though, is like when it goes, it resets Gerbil.
Oh, I gotcha. You know, what I would love to suggest, and sadly I got to get going here, is you could just use serial port JSON server directly if you wanted to try an alternate. Because that is a really efficient way to do stuff, and then you just sort of slowly feed stuff in. I mean, you could do it from the browser, you could do it from a Java app, you could do it from a command line app, you could do it from a Python script. Everything speaks WebSockets these days. So it's just one idea.
So how long is this WebSocket open now? If I leave this page,
it stays open permanently. Because remember, it's your own server, so it's just an open socket pipe.
I don't want to do that.
If you reload like you just did, it closes the WebSocket and reopens it. But
not the serial port.
But the serial port stays open forever.
Okay, so
they're independent elements, because you could have 10 browsers open with a WebSocket, 10 WebSockets to serial port JSON server, and they're all regurgitating the same content from the serial port. So the serial port JSON server truly like reflects the data to every endpoint that's connected to it. It's really fancy when it comes to that.
So I'm still open here.
Yeah.
I set the question mark, but
yeah, and you should see the coordinates correct.
Go
ahead, just
I type in question mark.
Yeah.
What's all this? Is this the response?
That is the raw console. You're seeing the raw language that the SPJS speaks to the browser. You should see the results here. Are you sure that it's not frozen?
Oh, there we go.
There it is.
Perfect. Are you pressing the question mark thing?
Am I what?
The question mark usually gives you.
It's possible that the Gerbil buffer is suppressing it. So disconnect and reconnect as default. And I bet you're right. I bet you Jarrett is suppressing it.
Okay, because I think I saw that in, I didn't trust the DROs earlier, so I typed the question mark and I could never get the answer.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
okay.
Yeah, you might be right. Because that sends back just the coordinates, right?
Okay, well, this is pretty amazing that I've just like abandoned the other workspace because I had a potential problem. I'm still got Gerbil alive here.
Yeah. Well, and this is also why you could connect from your phone to ChiliPeppr and then the same Serial JSON server and sort of monitor your job from your phone while it's also running from your laptop, and maybe also monitor it from an Android tablet that's acting as your DRO above your machine. I mean, the whole goal was to really move your CNC data to your local cloud called your home network. Instead of this idea that, oh, it's all tied to one desktop in one desktop app. I just think that that's not the future. The future is the cloud. And here we are.
Okay, so I'm loading Arduino here.
Sadly, I got to get going here. My wife is abandoning the kids in 20 minutes. So I got to get going.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Absolutely. It was fun. Thanks for having me. Oh my gosh, I got an applause. That's so great.
Okay, well, I got a lot to check out.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Bye.
Enjoy Chicago, everybody. I'm gonna go enjoy Seattle for the night.
All right.
Y'all. Bye.
Bye.